Hello and welcome. We're going to break down the Letter from the Producer Live Part 53. It was a Q&A session. It was all in Japanese, and thankfully they have this wonderful translation here. I spent most of the morning trying to translate it myself before realizing there was an official translation. So I have some notes. I've already seen a lot of this, but I haven't seen all of it. So let's just break it through here and break it down. We start off with some job changes. The question asked is, as a ninja player in Savage, when comparing DPS with other melee DPS, feel like the potency increase to Gust Slash was not enough for our overall damage. Our damage feels lacking for the amount of difficulty when playing the job. Any plans for ninja adjustment? Now, I had not gotten my ninja to 80 yet. My ninja's only at 72, but I definitely understand where they're coming from. Ninja does feel like it does a lot less damage than the rest of the jobs, just at that level. And the big problem with that is trick attack, of course. We've talked about it many times on this channel. The conversation's been talked about many times before. I was talking about it. Trick attack is so incredibly useful, but because of it, Ninja's personal damage has to be less, right? But that's not the only problem that Ninja had. And Yoshi's answer here with ninjutsu and mudra combinations being disrupted by GCD timing is causing clunkiness, shows that they recognize the problem and they're working on it. They want to try and make an environment where Ninja can still be good with high ping or with low ping, where Ninja can still be fun to play regardless. They're considering redoing the combo rotation entirely to reduce the number of combos, and that they kind of want to adjust all the numbers first before they mess with trick attack, because until they get all of this taken care of, it's really tough to know where trick attack will land. Maybe after they increase the numbers and adjust the combos, it'll be easier to. The current playstyle with Ninja is more of a GCD trying to weave in a ninjutsu and then going for another GCD. But what they really want you to do is to use a combo, then use a ninjutsu, then return to your combo. That's what they really want to be able to set up there. So I have high hopes for Ninja. I think they definitely noticed the problems that Ninja has, and Ninja's still perfectly playable the way that it is right now, but I think they've definitely noticed it and they're working on it. There we go. Let's make that a little bit easier to read. As a samurai, a pure DPS without party utility, I feel like I should be able to output more DPS. Also, conditions to use Shoha is difficult to use in real situations. Gakure's effect is a bit lacking as well. Please let us know what your plans are moving. And I'm not going to read all the questions one word for word, but I wanted to hit these job changes questions for sure. They definitely recognize the problem with samurai as well. Shoha is something that it seems like we're kind of excited for, but it doesn't seem like it's really worked out the way they wanted. So Shoha is probably going to get an entire mechanical change leading into 5.1. So expect that to be different. They also want to change damage. And so we'll probably see some potencies adjusted in 5.08. But it could also get readjusted again in 5.1 if they make it too strong. If it's not strong enough, things like that. And Hagakure being added back in, will definitely make a difference. I think it'll make a pretty big change in and of itself, but it's not going to be quite enough to put Samurai where it really needs to be right now. After that, they go into Summoner. Summoner has many buttons to press and is very busy. Additionally, it bothers me that refreshing dots at the timing you activate Dreadworm Trance, Firebird Trance, causes dots to fall off for a few seconds even when using Tri Disaster. Are there any plans to reduce the amount of button pressing or the adjusting the duration of dots? They specifically say they don't want to change dots. They don't want to extend them. They're instead reconsidering working the ruin spells, ruination, further ruin, and to make them be higher dependent on the number of dots inflicted. So instead of getting rid of, or instead of extending the dots, they kind of want to make the job play better around the dots. But this is still just being considered. They want to work on Ninja first, then Samurai, and then Summoner as their three main priorities right now. There were some questions asked about Bard. Bard was easier managed in 5.1, but since the number of songs hasn't increased, the job seems to be lacking party support. Do you have any plans to add songs that support the party? Yoshi P definitely wanted to make it clear that there were role differences, or job differences between the three jobs in the ranged DPS role, and he wants that line to be there. He wants, dancer to be dancer, bard to be bard, machinist to be machinist. And so they left some synergy and took away some. but they don't want to blur that line, so they want to make sure that they're still different. But they are considering what people say and would like more feedback on the issue before they make any big changes. The big change that they are making, that I think is a very big change, even though it doesn't seem like one, is that Pitch Perfect and Soul Voice will now have different sound effects, which is a huge change. It may not seem like one, but it will make it a lot easier for bards in the future. And then the last two that we have here are mentions of Astrologian, and then there is a question asked about tanks down here that comes to warriors. So we'll cover those, then the PvP changes, and then we'll just hit the rest of the questions with a quick little cover here. I say quick, we'll probably still be here for like an hour, but you know, there's a lot of questions. Thanks for the adjustments made towards Astrologians. Both the control ability and heal potency has increased, and it feels much better. Do you have any plans to add new effects to the cards? The answer, immediately Yoshi apologizes with, "We are truly sorry about the initial issues with the job. That said, card effects were changed to their current iteration because we received feedback from all regions that players did not want useless cards. It does indeed lower the feeling of drawing a card, but if we make certain cards significantly more powerful than others, then we'll just return to fishing for the good ones, so we decided to simplify it. We plan on continuing with this style for now." And I can't really blame them. They got a lot of feedback from all over the world that people did not like the old card system. Now they're getting a lot of feedback that people don't like the new card system, but I do think the new card system is statistically the better of the two, and so I don't see them changing it anytime soon. Then we'll hit this warrior question before we go for the PvP. There were no tank-related adjustments in 5.05. Are there any plans to adjust them? I think the balance is there, but I'd like some more adjustments to warriors' damage. And Yoshi's answer is, of course, I don't believe there are any differences between the tanks that are considered major disparities. With that being said, we are looking at the Savage feedback to see if there's anything we're overlooking, so it's not as if we think the current implementation is perfect. We'll continue making adjustments in 5.1, such as increasing the duration of defensive buffs. So it's not like they're not paying attention to it, they just don't think right now there's anything that really changed, which I would agree with. I think all the tanks, based on what I've seen, are pretty balanced right now. There are a few server-side things that I would like to see changed, like the server tick when it comes to Super Bolide. But, you know, that's not something that can be just adjusted in a patch, I would think. Then we have the PvP. Major updates coming with that. There's more actions coming. There's going to be up to 16, where you currently have 12, so you're getting 4 more actions. Tanks will get some group defensive abilities, so some AoE buffs, and healers will get some AoE healing in PvP, which looks really good. And all jobs will get self-healing actions in the form of charged actions, which is really cool. They also plan to introduce a new frontline map, currently called Seal Rock 2. And then, of course, we know that the new season of the Feast is coming. So there's big stuff coming for PvP as well. After this, we get into questions that will definitely have spoilers. So just a heads up. This is your chance to leave if all you cared about was the job changes and not the spoilers. If that was it, thanks for coming out. Appreciate you. There'll be a link to this live letter in the description if you want to come back to it later and when you've completed the MSQ. If not, here we go. There are definitely some questions here that I think are really cool and I want to touch on. I think that this is one of my favorite. How long have you been thinking about this story? How long have they had planned for Shadowbringers? And the answer is like basically right as the Warrior of Darkness, right as Ardbert shows up on the source, they had already started planning this. They didn't know everything, but they had already started planning all of this. They just had to get Doma, Alamigo, and the Garleans taken care of in 4.0 to be able to get there. Which may explain why Stormblood was split like that, and both of those areas, you know, could have had their own expansion, but at the same time, Shadowbringers is really good. So I'm not super upset about that. I think that's really cool. Then there's the mention here of, you know, the trolley in Amarang. It's the same hill as heading toward Camp Horizon. You know, are there other areas like that? And then, of course, Yoshi P says we won't elaborate for now because the patch series has just started. Then he talks about how, you know, Banri Oda will be at Gamescom, Natsuko Ishikawa and Takeo Suzuki will be visiting PAX West. You know, they might touch on more lore there. They're not really going to touch a lot of lore things today. But Oda and Yoshi P discussed the Warrior of Light would be able to carry with them crossing over to the first, and decided, because the question was, you know, how did it get set up that we would have Feo Ul reach across for the retainers and everything, and the Crystal XR calling forth heroes at the end of the MSQ. And they basically decided, hey, we can't just have the retainers carry all the stuff over, so we need a link. And so they decided Feoul would be born. And obviously that made the story very different because of the things that Feoul does. So it's really cool to get an insight into how things can change and how things are done. There's a question here about people being amazed at the 5.0 cutscenes, and then, asking, what brought on this change? And Yoshi P just being like, actually, this stuff started in like 4.3, 4.4. I guess you just missed it, but Ishikawa will probably talk about the finer details at PAX West. Questions about trust. Really interesting answer here. The question was basically, would we get any new trust NPCs, and would, if there were dungeons after 5.1 that were MSQ dungeons, would the trust continue in dungeons? And the answer is yes, they would. And whether you've leveled them or not, they will be leveled up to that point until you complete that dungeon. They'll go back down again. But the really cool thing about it is they're thinking about adding them to trials. So you could theoretically beat Innocence or beat, I just completely forgot her name, Titania, with just the truss in a normal run. Obviously, it wouldn't work for Extreme. But they're also thinking about adding trust dungeons to previous expansions, with the Grand Company leaders being the trusts. And they talk about how adding a trust is extremely cost heavy on the dev side. I mean, they basically have to make a whole new NPC to be able to run dungeons, program them to have their own individual personality, But I think it's really cool that they're considering adding that back in. So definitely looking forward to that. Then there's a couple of these in here, and they're really, I'm going to try and be nice. There's a couple questions that I just go, why? Why did we waste time with this? There's a couple repeat questions in here. And then there's questions about stuff that, like, we already knew, which makes me go, But not everybody keeps up on all the news, so it's like, whatever, But were the sandwiches from the MSQ quest handmade by the Exarch himself? If it's handmade, I'll store it safely. But if not, I'll just eat them up. Let me know. I mean, there's a lot of other questions here that could have been asked. Yoshi P's answer is, I don't know. Just eat them. Just eat them up. Eat them. Man, I don't. We'll move on. Like, okay, we're not gonna move on. I'm gonna tackle this. So let's say you really care about the Exarch, right? And you have an idea he made those sandwiches. Put them on a retainer. There's plenty more food in the game. Don't ask this question to Yoshi P. Headcanon that he made them for you himself instead of having them made in a kitchen. And then put them on a retainer and keep them safe. Or just eat them anyway, because that's what the original purpose was. But whatever. We'll move on. Questions about if we'll see more MXelk. It's a story we've only seen from one perspective. So, please think of it as a surprise from later. I think we'll definitely see some more in the future of the past. What was Yoshi P's favorite protagonist in Shadowbringer? And he really liked Runar. He really liked Thancred. And he really liked Urianger. And some of the things he thought were really cool were Runar's devotion to Y'shtola, Thancred's chipped gunblade, and the way that he fights Ranjit, everything to do with that, and then Urianger, and just how great Urianger is in this expansion, and I agree, 100%. Basically asking questions about the soundtrack. Soken shows up at this point. He was in the background. And he talks about how Shadowbringers, the main theme, was his favorite, and that there were 3 different versions of it. The first version, I don't know why it's not in here. Like I said, I translated some of this myself before I got to this, but maybe they just didn't think it was important. But the first version, the lyrics Soken whispered in the office, because the one can bring shadow, one brings light, because that was all the lyrics he had right then. And I just think that's really cool that, the 3 different versions over the course of the different fan events, so that there would be more of the song to show off. Then we get a question here that's really cool lore-wise to me. Encyclopedia Eorzea 2 mentions that the statues from within Amdapor, which are the white lion statues and the white Karibu statue, that you may recognize as having the same exact form as Sin Eaters, were made in the image of transcendent beings from yet another plane. Is this referring to Sin Eaters from the first? And Yoshi P's answer is in the sense of, if you look back at the lore book, you notice certain things. We did this intentionally, which is super cool to me. It makes me want to go back through all the old dungeons and try to find out what else they added or changed, not changed, but paid off, what else worked out in the end. Then we have things like, when are you planning to release the next Beast Tribe quest? 5.1. So this is one of those things, and like I said, there's many more of these in here that we already knew. But again, maybe somebody didn't know. Maybe somebody hasn't been paying attention to any of the pre-release information saying that Beast Tribes and Deep Dungeon would come in 5.1, 5.2. But hey, Beast Tribes coming in 5.1. Look forward to it. This is a fun question. How on earth did the Warrior of Light come up with that version of Leviathan and Titan? And Yoshi P's answer is maybe it was something like Leviathan was patch 2.1, 2.2. He was attacking from 2 locations. Was that a head and a tail? And I think it mixed with the Shinryu mechanic and became something like that. Perhaps the Wandering Minstrel was also influenced by how the Warrior of Light described them. That's why things turned out to be so difficult. Titan is likely due to Thancred bringing up the topic of falling, which probably got mixed in with explosions and the Goblin tank. So that's pretty cool, the idea that we mixed all that up in our mind, and that's why it happened that way. Then we have the Lahi from Raktika Greatwood. Lahi is stuck in their head. Like to know what the lyrics are. And Soken again answers and just says he doesn't really know either. The lyrics are unknown. Question about the crystalline mean and if it will return. And the answer is they're completed for now. They might do something in the future if enough people want it, but they don't have any plans. A question of, can we get Queen or Seraph? Mentioned in the lore as to how we got them. And basically Yoshi P mentions that Banri Oda will probably talk about it. He wants to support a theory he saw on Twitter about how the turret tried its best and turned automaton. Then we get some information about Amorat. Basically, the question's asked, there's a really tall building outside the accessible southern area. We'll be able to visit it later. And then the answer is the entire city's mirage, so you can't go there. To be frank, we haven't even made it. Please think of it as due to the limitations of its architect and the development. So unfortunately, no dice. Would be cool, but unfortunately. Is there a way to tell the difference between male and female dwarves when they're wearing helmets? No, there isn't. No need to. That's how it's intended. If you do the dwarf quests, they actually mention that in there. That part of the reason of the helmets is so nobody knows if they're a male or a female. So they're isolationist in a lot of ways. And again, it's one of those questions that we could have had a different question here. But sure, okay. Maybe they didn't know. It's fine. Just do your quest, please. I'm curious what meal tastes like. The food in the real world that would taste similar to it. And then Yoshi basically says, it vary for each person, but he considered something like bread, and that it might be sweet, So if you eat it, you might become a forgiven. So, bear that in mind. The Protectors of the Wood side quest with the Raktika mentions Quirrells and Namazu. We do see Quirrells on the first, but we haven't seen Namazu. And then the answer, of course, is there's a possibility that they're on the first already. There's always a chance of survivors. Guess only Banri Oda would know the truth. Question about if the dancer from the original trailer is Lena. And then, the answer is basically like that was done in September 2017. Sure, we didn't intend for it to be the same character, but don't know how the lore will be in the future. We'll see. Sure, whatever. But no, that was not the intention originally. So this is a pretty interesting question. And I think it's worth checking out for sure. Due to loot changes in Eden Savage, we're seeing disagreements between pickup groups over the loot. For someone like me without a static, I'm worried that I won't be able to get any gear aside from exchange items. Do you have any plans to adjust the loot system? And Yoshi's answer is, on the other hand, there's also the chance that you win all the loot, so it's quite difficult. In terms of sheer probability, the current system should come out on top. I think it's at least better than having items drop for a role no one plays, so I think for now I'd like to leave things as is. And I definitely understand that. It's it's RNG. It could go either way. It's unfortunate for the people that it doesn't work for, but it's definitely nice for the ones that it does. Then, of course, the same question basically for weapons from Extreme Trials, except the way that weapons are done in Extreme Trials is very different, of course. But it is it's about loot, and the question is basically, hey, can we get something like that of Eden? Can the Extreme Trials be like Eden? Which is interesting to me that these two questions are back to back. And then basically it's, if you don't see it within 10 clears, it should have been good. Like, you should have got it for sure. But Yoshi P has ran it 15 times and didn't see it. So the current feel is, well, maybe it's not good enough, and they're going to reevaluate it. Easing Eureka so that it can be done with a smaller party or solo. That's something they're discussing. They haven't made a decision yet, but they may add new logos actions to make it easier for solo. Question about, is it a bug that we can change our direction during jump? Is this going to get fixed? I believe there are various opinions regarding this one, but I personally am enjoying this. But I'd like it to be untouched. And Yoshi P says Dragoons can currently change the direction during jump. If this becomes a sort of necessary technique, we may have to disable this on Dragoon's jump action. Normal jump will be changed, which makes perfect sense to me. As long as it's not a problem, they don't want to fix it. This is a pretty interesting one. You cap out on bicolor gems before you hit the new rank, and so the question is, can you just increase the cap? And Yoshi P has mentioned, they noticed it's inconvenient, so they're going to see about adjusting that. They're currently considering. Then, of course, the question: Vieira Rothgar recruits for the company squadron being considered. Any plans to add a feature to recruit or search for free companies, also community groups other than free company link shells, and they're coming up with a new feature tentatively called Circles. Be less restrictive than link shells, almost like the Circle of Knowing. Create a circle for certain activities that you can register for, and it will send you notifications. You can also use it like some kind of customer list. It will be added in 5.1. We're hoping to cover it in the next live level. And then, of course, any plans for a new deep dungeon in 5.x? That's still a secret. But we already know they're coming up with one because they mentioned like the deep dungeon equivalent would be coming in like 5.2 when they first brought it up. So, like, yes, that's happening for sure. The beard on Hura shown in the patch notes and benchmark software is cool. Do you have any plans to give that beard as an option for players in the future? Apparently, it's not something that can be done easy, but something that requires specifying a Huron male face pattern. However, it may take time, but we'd like to make it work somehow. Question here about hairstyles for Vieira and Hrothgar, and of course, they're going to be adding more in future patches. This is a good one here. Please allow us to challenge the Great Hunt Extreme in an undersized party so I can go with more friends. This is currently being worked on. Thank you very much. In Tempest, the music doesn't change even when you enter battle. I imagine this is intentional, since a large-scale fate changes the music. But I'm curious about the reason behind it. And of course, it's about the atmosphere, with foam appearing and foreshadowing incoming danger, which is really cool. I really like that zone a lot, and I think that's a really nice touch. Have it be special when it comes to the music. Then, of course, will there be an extreme version of the last boss battle? Yes, it will be added. Level sync feature of 5.0 side quests is really helpful. Can we get that earlier? No, because it's going to recreate. They have to redo all the quests to do that, so no. I feel like a lot of times these kind of questions get asked. Like, hey, can we get all of this in all of this? Can we retroactively add this to the rest? But I think people forget that to do that, you can't just go, all right, let's check a box. You have to, like, actually go back and redo all of the quests. You have to set basically that one quest has to become 10 levels worth of a quest, or more, depending on where you put it. And although I think it would be great to have that change, it's not just a switch to flip, Then, of course, the question of, I'd like to know more about in-game content for Disciples of a Hand and Land. And that's for future live levels, which they'd mentioned before, so, Sure. However, they say regarding apartments, it might be fun to make them a Malrot or Crystarium theme. That'd be really cool. Then they talk about desynthesis here a little bit, and this one I'm kind of sad about, because they're making large changes to desynth. Rates will be changed to 100% guaranteed, which is like, cool, yeah, that's great for everybody that hasn't been leveling desynth. But I have been, for a long time, little by little, just on the side for fun. And they're all leveled up now. So, I guess it doesn't really change because they're all leveled up now, so I guess it doesn't really change anything for me. It's just like, okay. I mean, I'm sticking to desynth. I love desynth. It's a fun mini game to me, even though this will remove the leveling up mechanic. But it also is a great way to get rid of stuff. It's a great way to sell off parts of stuff. All of the parts will be less expensive now because everybody can do it. But, you know, hey, is what it is. I feel like the amount of resources required to craft Weaver recipes is higher. I've definitely seen that on the forums, and they're planning on adjusting this. It's frustrating when monsters appear near gathering nodes as a gatherer. It absolutely is, especially in the new areas. It feels like there's definitely some monsters that are just like right beside a node all the time, and it's really frustrating. And they're making fundamental changes to stealth in patch 5.1 to fix that, including being ignored even while mounted. So, very much. Main jobs are all battle related, and they need help melding materia. Success rate is purely based on luck. There are times where it requires a good amount of time for the melding, and I feel bad for the person helping. You consider adding this feature so we can do them through NPCs. So basically what they're saying is, I do not have a crafter leveled, but I want to make this easier. I want you to make this easier so that I don't feel as bad for the person that has to help me. And Yoshi P is basically like, level a crafter. And I don't blame him, right? Like, that's a reasonable understanding to take of, hey, just level a crafter though, and you won't have this problem, and we don't have to change anything. And I hope that person does level a crafter, because I do think crafting is fun in this game. With the addition of more jobs, the armory chest is constantly full. Can we get more slots? And of course, the answer is that's more data. We're working on it. It's less about database space, and more about the amount of data each character carries around with them. Because as we know, in 14, because of 1.0, your character is not just your character. It's your character, and everything that you own basically moves with you. And it's unfortunate that 1.0 is built that way. They would have to basically break it and rebuild it from the ground up, which would be a brand new game, to be able to fix that problem. And so little by little, they are slowly fixing it. We got more inventory space before. We have the Chocobo saddlebags now. Little by little, we'll get there. A lot of interesting pop-up boxes from NPCs, but sometimes they're hard to read. Could we get the text size changed? And Yoshi P basically says, hey, they're in there in a way that doesn't strain anything, so we can't really let you adjust them. But it might be possible to increase the size of them, so we'll consider. Then a question here of like, hey, can I change my fairy to look like Fail? Which would be really cool, to be honest. And then Yoshi P is just like, well, you never know if Fail will listen to your orders. Might refuse to heal you until you agree to solving riddles for 7 days and 7 nights. That seems impossible. So I would take that answer as a no. This question comes up a lot. I feel like I see it at least once every 5 or 6 months. Are there plans to make it easier to tell if an attack is physical or magical? They have answered this before, for sure. But they haven't implemented it because it would delay patches. It would basically, the work, as they've said last time, the work that it would take up almost an entire patch cycle. Interrupt gives you an option to start adding that in, right? But bosses have different attacks, so you would have to have a different symbol, I suppose, to be able to come up for every attack. To be able to know, like, is this one physical, is this one magical? And it would have to go to every enemy in the game. And as he points out here, they often make last-minute balance changes, and they might have to change a physical magical attack right before release. To display that information, we'd have to change the UI whenever we make such an adjustment, which would delay the patch releases. They're not trying to intentionally withhold the information at all, and I do think it would make it really easy if... Hey, go on, buddy. You're tearing up the green screen. It'd make it really easy if... especially for Dark Knights, if they could tell what was physical or what was magical. Maybe in the future we'll get that, but I just don't think it's ever going to happen. Please add a preview for battle voices. This is probably specifically because the Vieira battle voice, I think it was voice 6 or voice 9, is really rough. Very different from what it sounds like. It'll take some time, but we'd like to discuss the possibilities. I'll find myself ending up with a lot of equipment with low durability when leveling. Would it be possible to add a feature that repairs all items? I mean, that would be cool, but Yoshi P is just like, repair whenever you can. Like, just go repair, though. Sometimes when I unlock a new action, I forget to add it to my hotbar. Please make it easier to tell whether an action is already placed on a hotbar or not. So if you have empty spots on your hotbars, when a new action comes in, it'll autofill on the hotbar, which is great. But as Yoshi P points out, you can also add actions to your hotbar before you unlock them. So please try using that feature. And I think this may be from people that have full hotbars already and just don't realize they've unlocked something. But it also pops up in the middle of the screen to let you know you unlock something level. So, maybe be more aware. That's all I'm saying. Sure, mistakes can happen. Maybe be more aware. Do you have any plans to add crafted primal weapons for Gunbreaker and Dancer? They don't have the resources for it at the moment, but they will work on it. They might work on it between patches. They can't say we'll do it. They're wanting to add more gear to it. People love the NPC gear in Shadowbringers. Are there any plans to add Yustola or Exarch robes as optional items? Yustola's outfit will be made soon because Yoshi wants it. Dwarven furnishings for Lalafels should be possible. He just wants to make sure. Removing unique trait from rings so that you can wear two of the same. Yoshi says, well, he does understand why you want this. Probably not going to happen. I think it'd be more likely to just remove a ring slot so that you can only wear one ring. Are there any plans for housing area or apartments in Northront? It's hard to say since we don't know what's going to happen in the first from out. Hope that doesn't mean anything bad happens in the first. More dice, which don't have as many variations. That's data transfer as well. Adding more pallets might be difficult, but we'll check to make sure. Feoul Minion, for sure happening. Yoshi P was a little worried that player opinion would be divided on Feoul, but it seems like people really like Feoul so far, and I agree. Feoul's great. Weapon designs in 5.0 have been cool. Would it be possible to add a house furnishing item that can display your weapons? So the problem with that, it's not impossible, but the point where the weapon's attached to the character model is different depending on the weapon type. So it'd be really odd stacking them in any kind of display because they would be at different heights and angles and things like that. So he says they'll consider it. I think that'd be really cool. I would love to be able to display some of my weapons. I'd like to be able to allow my minions to roam around the house like they do in the Gold Saucer Minions. And of course, this has been brought up before. GP says they would need to avoid other objects, which doesn't seem like something to do with the current housing system. Take some time before we can announce it, but we're planning a sort of farm for them, so please look forward to it. Minion farm would be really cool if you could just hang out with your minions there. Purple trees in Lakeland as a housing item. Please look forward to it. Mysterious singer at the fan festival who was wearing a Byakko-themed kimono. When will this kimono be added to the game? And he just says, I don't think this will be added. And that was, of course, his own kimono that he wore. An esthetician in the Crystarium basically say no, not going to be possible. Esthetician needs to stay on the source. Please at least remember the source when you want to adjust your hairstyle. Please go home sometimes. But there was a funny mention where they were talking about having Feoul cut your hair for you, but that Feoul wouldn't have the skill or techniques for it, so don't think that'd be possible. Confirm the help text for fairy actions through the scholar actions that activate them. This will be implemented. So basically, you'll be able to see those on the tooltip, which would be really nice. Lot of cutscenes really demonstrated the quest team's hard work. Does Yoshi P have any recommended side story quests? Yoshi P was pretty worried that the fairies would wind up being more Moogles, where people really didn't like them. But glad to see that they avoided that. And then he recommends the side quest about the dwarf that can't properly greet other dwarves with a lolly ho. So, maybe check that one out. It's really fun. Please set appropriate item level restrictions for leveling dungeons. Currently, it's possible for players to enter even if their item level is far too low to actually complete the dungeon. I understand the issue and are discussing it. Simply setting an item level may create new problems. Trying to come up with a different solution. This is something people have asked for a long time. But, again, if you just go, nah, you gotta be item level 50 to enter this dungeon, well, then they have to make sure that that's possible beforehand. And so they'd have to go back over all of the gear again that's available up to that level. There's definitely something to consider. It's not just a simple thing. World Visit now in place. It's harder to see a hunt enemy's actions due to the number of players. I'd like to see adjustments on display priority. Furthermore, the speed in which it gets taken down is much faster now, so it's harder to join in casually. I'd like to see something like hunts, which can only be done with players from homeworld players, to be considered. Yoshi Pete says, while this may be an issue now, it will gradually calm down. So for now, please think of it as a festival or something. I think changing it to be homeworld only isn't the way to go about it. Adjusting the display priority is impossible. Never mind. And then the last question. Looking forward to the Alliance raid coming in patch 5.1, and I'm curious to see what kind of gear we'll be able to get. Also, would there be any chance that we'll see weapons as a reward? I don't mind it being purely for glamour, but I want that katana shown in the art. Yoshi P says, actually, I happened to check the models for the rewards today. Provided some feedback, but they were very well made. Made the decision to make the costumes wearable by both genders, so please look forward to it. A katana weapon would be limited to certain jobs only, and we haven't planned for them at the moment, but we may consider it if it's highly requested. I think we have a guest with us for 5.1 Letter Live to talk about Yorha, so please look forward to it. That is, for sure, going to be Yoko Taro. So, very excited for that. Let me know your thoughts on this live letter in the comment section down below. Again, I will link this thread so you can take a look at it yourself. I'm pretty excited. I thought we had some good questions, we had some bad questions, and we had some odd, why sandwiches, why questions. But at the same time, pretty good live letter. Until next time, though, I have been Trey. This has been the Full Spectrum. And remember to always enjoy the full spectrum that FF14 has to offer.